welcome into ESPN FC. No host today, so I'm standing in. James Olley's with me. James, you were at the big match at Villa Park. What's your takeaways?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think this is a day for Unai Emery to celebrate a further rehabilitation of his reputation in England. It's not the first time he's secured a big result since he was sacked as Arsenal against Arsenal. Of course, he knocked them out of the Europa League as Villarreal manager in 2021, but this is his first victory over his former club in England with an English side, and I thought they deserved it really. You know, and you think about all of the effort and energy they put into Wednesday night when they beat Manchester City here 1-0. They were out on their feet really for the final kind of half an hour. Every substitutions are really key to keeping them in the game and just trying to break up some of Arsenal's momentum. Arsenal created some really good chances. You could argue maybe could have nicked a point on the balance of play. But I think this is a night for Emery really. And at the full-time whistle, I thought, you know, big celebrations. He didn't go anywhere near the Arsenal bench. Obviously Arteta wasn't there. He was in the stands because he was serving a touchline ban, but he didn't go near anywhere any of the staff. Some of them, of course, he knows. He instead went to celebrate with the Villa fans. 15th consecutive home win, club record, and they're 2 points off the top of the league.
I don't think anybody supporting Villa or watching English football could have foreseen this turnaround, but it's certainly a pat in the back to a quality coach, that's for sure, and it shows what you can do when you bring somebody like that in. But I think the burning question for everybody is, this has been such a great story, as you mentioned, and he is such an experienced coach, but just how far, James, can this Villa side go, do you think?
Well, look, I mean, their first 11 is obviously very, very good, and at home they have proven that they can literally beat anyone. So, you know, if they can continue anything like the home form that they've shown in the second half of the season, then, you know, they're going to be Champions League contenders. Top four contenders. I don't see them being able to sustain this from the title race, just because I think if you look at what was happening there in the second half, that was quite a clear example of how stretched this squad is. That you know, I think he made the change of Leon Bailey at half time because he knew that would give him an extra window to make those 5 changes as the game went on. I thought that was quite clever of Emery to do that. And, you know, they were making double changes and changes right to the end because they just looked out on their feet. You know, City obviously will have taken a lot out of them in midweek, and then to have to play the top 2 from last season in the space of 4 days, the only benefit of which being at home is a huge ask for any side, and to beat them both, you know, it has a lot of them excited. There were Villa fans shouting into the press box saying, you know, we've changed the narrative. Villa are back. Make sure you make the point. Villa are back, and it is exciting to think about how far they can go. I just think in the second half of the season, when they've got obviously the Conference League to come again, when they're playing Thursday, Sundays, could you really see this squad sustain a title challenge? Probably not, especially if City put the afterburners on like they tend to do in the second half of the season. But for now, they can dare to dream, and Emery's got them doing that.
And as for Arsenal, I know you're waiting patiently for Arteta to pop his head in. Has he got any complaints today about that result?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't. Yeah, as you say, we haven't quite heard from him yet. But I suspect he will have something to say about the disallowed goal, the Kai Havertz goal. Look, I mean, Arteta's talked a lot this season about facing low blocks and, you know, that teams, particularly the Emirates, are coming and just saying, you know, come and break us down, sit with 4 or 5 at the back, two banks of defensive lineups and, you know, trying to leave no spaces. Villa did the opposite of that today. Villa were playing with a very high line, taking risks in possession, and it seemed to flummox Arsenal, I thought, in the first sort of half an hour of the game. They started to find the spaces, started to find the ways through. And you think about Martin Odegaard in particular, missed 2 really bad, really clear chances, 1 in each half. I think, you know, just speaking to people up here, I think there were some protests from the Arsenal bench about the Gabriel Jesus penalty early in the second half. I think they feel they maybe should have had a penalty there. And obviously, as I say, there's the handball. But I just think, you know, all round, you look at Odegaard, Saka wasn't at his best today. The attacking players, you know, who've been so good for Arsenal over the last sort of 18 months, just didn't quite turn it on today. Martinelli, dangerous, but again, not quite at his best. And that was the difference, really. A slow start ultimately cost them. They've been able to get out of jail a few times. I mean, they did it already this week at Luton, right at the death of that Declan Rice goal in the 97th minute. And of course, they did it in this fixture in February. You know, they scored twice late on here to snatch a 4-2 win. So you can't do it every time, and I think that will be the frustration for Arteta, is that, you know, in the phases of play where they were the better team, they didn't make it count.
I suppose the one upside for him is that, you know, Liverpool win today, but there's no side at the moment looks like it's going to run away with it or put a big run of games together. I suppose City, as you know, have done that over the previous years, but even they themselves have looked somewhat fragile at the back, and it was on paper probably the toughest game of the Premier League going away to Villa Park. So it's not the end of the world for Arsenal, but you're right, as an attacking threat, you know, that chance Odegaard had in the first half when he wanted to get it back on his left foot, the Saka chance at the back post. I think he will have something to say about, I think, the Douglas Luiz challenge, James, on Gabriel Jesus in the second half, because we saw something similar at Selhurst Park earlier today with a kick in the calf and a penalty was given. So I'm sure he's going to have something to say there. But it's not the end of the world for Arsenal, but it just seems at the moment there is no side without their flaws in the Premier League.
No, you're right, and the Premier League is the league that it is in some senses because of its flaws, because of the sort of defensive mistakes that a lot of teams make, and how open and entertaining these games have been this season. You know, you think of even, I know this has been a 1-0 result here today, but a lot of the games between the top sides, even, you know, think about Chelsea, Man City. I know Chelsea is struggling this season, but the sort of traditional big six have played out some really high-scoring, entertaining games, and you know, that makes it only more exciting to watch. But yeah, you're right. I mean, Arsenal certainly won't consider themselves shot here by any stretch of the imagination. I just think psychologically it's very important for them to stay in touch, because, of course, we all know that they blew a lead last season. They had an 8-point advantage, having played a game more at the beginning of April, and still didn't see out the title from that position. And I think for this sort of young group, relatively inexperienced group, I don't think they can afford to fall behind. I think the only way they win the league is if they are out in front, they stay or stay within a point or two of the leaders all the way through. I don't think they can, you know, afford to get 4, 6, 8 points behind a Manchester City or even a Liverpool if they are back to their very best, and then try and chase them down in the back end of the season, particularly now you consider that they've obviously got the Champions League to contend with, which they didn't have last year. So I think that's the concern for Arteta, is that there's obviously games thick and fast now. The table's going to look very different come the beginning of January, because of all the games that we've got in the next sort of 3 weeks. And the key then really for Arsenal in terms of their self-belief is to make sure they stay in touch, put this result quickly behind them and move on.
And just one last point quickly, particularly for the Arsenal fans that are watching, do you see Arsenal spending money or strengthening in January?
Yeah, they certainly want to. I think some of it, they don't have a massive amount of headroom financially because, of course, they spent quite a lot in the summer. I know that they're looking at centre forwards, and I know they're looking at centre midfielders. I think the central midfield issue will be one that they may have dictated to them by whether they can sell. There are 1 or 2 players I think they would be willing to ship out, and then obviously that would create the money that they would then go and spend. Centre forward wise, Ivan Toney's the one that they've been looking at for quite some time. He's not going to come cheap. There's talk out of Brentford that he might be 80 million, that kind of area. That's obviously a huge deal to try and do mid-season. And I'm not sure whether Arsenal would have the funds to be able to do that without selling players. But certainly the intention is to strengthen, I think, because I think they know that they are a little bit short still. And, you know, they bought back in last January, they bought very well. They bought Jorginho, they bought Leandro Trossard. They need to be clever in the market again in January, I think, to help them kick on. Okay,
the Unai Emery bandwagon at Villa rolls on. James Olley from Villa Park. Stay warm. Thanks very much.